Senator Witkos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. While this is a new concept in this committee, I think it goes back quite some time. And for the new members here, I'll give you a little history lesson. 2 years ago, this state was having difficulty in crafting a balanced budget. And one of those proposals at the time was to enact within a budget bill an economic recovery bond, a total of authorization up to $956 million. But the point was, how are we going to pay that back? So there was a thing called the CTA, or the Competitive Transmission Assessment. And what that was a percentage of each ratepayer's electric bill that they would pay in their monthly bill to pay off these economic recovery bonds. And there was a lawsuit filed over that. And the lawsuit, basically as it moves towards the Connecticut Supreme Court, was that it was a separate but equal, because the bill said every CLMP customer and every UI customer was going to be charged this competitive transmission assessment or tax. But the bill forgot to mention those in the municipal electric authority customers. So not all ratepayers in the state of Connecticut was paying that bill, just a few. So my position is that there are those in this building that believe the plaintiff will prevail in the lawsuit, and that will grow the size of our budget deficit that much more. So somehow we need to be creative in how we fill that budget gap of those authorization up to $956 million in taxes. And this committee has heard bills before on a windfall profit tax, because there are some members that believe that generators make too much money, and if we tax them, we can realize savings. But we never realized how much money they made because we couldn't get that data. So this is a means of devising a plan where we believe there are those that can pay this charge without being passed on to the ratepayers. And that may be true in the short term, but I'm not so certain that's true in the long term. Because in the short term, most of our contracts are long, and so they've already been bid out, especially by those addressed in this bill, specifically the nuclear power plants, the coal-fired one plant that we have in the state of Connecticut, and the oil plants. Now, during the public hearing, we heard about how the tax is discriminatory based on the specific generators and based on the time of year. We have one coal-fired plant in the state of Connecticut, and that plant is only going to be taxed in the months of January, February, June, July, and August, basically the time when the plant's running at peak generation. But we also heard from that plant, the PSEG plant, that they are the largest taxpayer in the city of Bridgeport. And the city of Bridgeport will take a massive hit if that plant goes out of business. They will take a massive hit to their mill rate if that plant goes out of business, as will the 105, I believe it was, so employees that are employed down there. We also heard that this may not be a good thing. And why is it not a good thing? Because we'd be the only state in the country that would adopt such a tax. We heard states as New Hampshire, New York, Illinois, Pennsylvania. They all considered this tax, but they rejected it as a bad public policy. How can Connecticut compete in a business environment, a global environment, if we are instituting bad public policy, which has been rejected resoundingly by every other state in this nation except for Connecticut? Furthermore, the tax proposes to tax nuclear at 2 cents a kilowatt hour. We had testimony from Dominion that they generate approximately 160 million kilowatts of power a year. At 2 cents, that puts us up towards the $300 million mark in taxes by one business in the state of Connecticut. Imagine if you were the recipient of a $300 million sole tax to yourself and your business. That doesn't come close to the amount of money that we are authorized to spend in the economic recovery bonds. However, the bill states once those bonds are paid off, that money can be used for three purposes. And I'm afraid that one of those purposes is, as we looked out to a lone field, we found a sacred cash cow hiding behind a tree. And we're going to bring that cash cow in and we're going to gut it because we're going to use it for the state coffers for operating expenses. Because the bill states that there's three different pools the money can go to. One, the general fund. Two, to reduce rates for ratepayers. And three, for energy efficiency programs. I'm concerned that there may be those that decide, well, this is another revenue stream for the state of Connecticut, so we'll put it all into the general fund. And that is not the way this committee should operate. If we're meaning to support and reduce ratepayers' expenses, then we should say so in the bill. If we're for energy efficiency programs, then we should say so in the bill. None of that money, once the CTA bond is paid off, should go to the general fund. With that, Madam Chair, I will not be supporting the bill before us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Witkos.